Even before they were teammates, a collision at a rain-soaked Fuji Speedway in 2007 lit the fuse on a rivalry between Mark Webber and Sebastian Vettel that would boil over plenty of times over the coming years.
And hit me behind the safety car, I'm out.
Webber branded Vettel a kid with no experience. 3 years later, and the pair, now slugging it out for the title as Red Bull teammates, collided again when dicing for the lead at the 2010 Turkish Grand Prix.
What the f*** are we doing here? What a stupid action! I'm going home. You.
Webber was incensed at Silverstone in 2010 when the team took a new spec front wing off his car to give it to Vettel. But it was in Sepang in 2013 when their long-standing rivalry really hit boiling point. In the final laps of the race, Webber was leading with Vettel second, and the team ordered them to hold station to the finish. What happened next made the term Multi-21 famous around the world.
Sebastian, multi-map 2-1, multi-map 2-1.
Well, Sebastian, you need to give him the space, hold position.
It's wheel to wheel again for the two Red Bulls, Sebastian Vettel and Mark Webber. Vettel on the inside. Has he now stolen the lead from his teammate? Can Webber scrap back? Oh, fantastic stuff. Mark Webber regains the lead, but the battle is not over yet. And there is barely a metre between the two cars as down the hill they plunge and side by side onwards towards the braking zone at turn 4. Webber on the inside. Has he got the better traction? No. Vettel goes dancing round the outside, and it's a dance that takes him into the lead of this race. Wow!
Multi-21's it. Yeah, multi-21.
I won a race as well, but in the end the team made a decision, which we always say before the start of the race is probably how it's going to be. We look after the tyres, get the car to the end, and in the end Seb made his own decisions today, and we'll have protection as usual, and that's the way it goes.
I messed up in that situation, and obviously took the lead from Mark, which I can see now he's upset, but I want to be honest at least and stick to the truth and apologize. I know that it doesn't really help his feelings right now.
2021 saw the closest title race in years, with Red Bull producing a car worthy of the skills of their wunderkind driver Max Verstappen, to create a combination that could finally challenge the dominance of Mercedes and the greatest driver of his generation, Lewis Hamilton. No quarter was given as both drivers realised every single point would count, and contact between them seemed inevitable as they battled it out. They came close at Imola in round 2 before colliding in spectacular fashion at Silverstone's Copse Corner on the opening lap of the British Grand Prix. Verstappen was pitched into the barriers while Hamilton went on to win.
Into Copse Corner. These are critical corners for this Grand Prix.
Hamilton's going to try again, this time on the inside, a continent touch! Verstappen is out of the race, and that's a big crash into Copse! Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen coming together. Hamilton continues on.
4 races later, the F1 circus arrived in Monza, with just 3 points separating the two contenders, and the pressure ramping up. As the race approached half distance, both drivers had slow pit stops, meaning Hamilton emerged from the pit lane side by side with his rival as they thundered down towards the first chicane.
And there's Max Verstappen right behind Hamilton into the first chicane. Once again, it's wheel to wheel. Hamilton and Verstappen, and this time Verstappen and Hamilton have crashed out, and they are both out.
What a bizarre incident. Absolutely bizarre.
I was ahead going into the corner, and next thing I know, I guess Max went over the second curb or something like that. He obviously knew at that point he wasn't going to make the corner, and he drove into me.
Unfortunately, he ran me a bit too much out of road, so then I clipped the sausage curb, and that's why we touched.
The death of Ayrton Senna had cast a shadow over the 1994 World Championship. But 2 drivers emerged to fight for the title: Benetton's Michael Schumacher and Damon Hill, driving for Williams. Schumacher started the season in terrific form, winning 6 of the first 7 Grand Prix to open up a commanding lead in the title race. But thereafter, Hill began to grow into his team leader role. while Schumacher fell foul of the rules at Silverstone and Spa, being disqualified from both races as well as being banned for a further 2. Hill seized his opportunity and took a flurry of victories in the second half of the year, meaning when they arrived in Adelaide for the season finale, the Englishman was just 1 point behind. From P2 on the grid, Schumacher darted into the lead of the race at the start, with Hill following, and so it remained until lap 36.
Schumacher's off, Schumacher's lost time, yeah. Hill goes by.
Oh, out goes Schumacher. The German is out of the Australian Grand Prix, and Damon Hill only has to keep going to be world champion of 1994, but can he keep going?
Hill's shaking his head. He knows in his heart of hearts that it is all over.
It's over now, and it's a bit of an empty feeling, but I think I gave him a good run for his money, and he certainly was feeling the pressure because he ended up falling off the road.
And the car was handling a bit difficult, but I didn't have a lot of time to find out how was the handling, because suddenly I found myself up in the air.
Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg had been childhood friends, karting teammates and fierce competitors from their earliest years in racing. But could any friendship survive the white heat of a Formula One title battle? The first cracks in their relationship appeared in Monte Carlo in 2014, when Rosberg was accused of deliberately ruining Hamilton's final run in qualifying. Before the two Mercedes teammates made contact on track in the Belgian Grand Prix.
Oh, and to be fair, Hamilton has actually got more of a front wing now. He's got to puncture Lewis Hamilton. Nico Rosberg's lost a bit of front wing, and for the first time this season, we've seen the two Mercedes drivers coming together.
Nico hit me. Nico's hit me.
In 2015, Rosberg accused Hamilton of compromising his race in Shanghai and of forcing him wide at Turn 1 in Austin, a race the Briton won to secure a third world title. Rosberg was not amused by that, or by Hamilton helpfully throwing him his podium cap in the cool-down room after the race. But in 2016, Rosberg turned up the heat, winning the first 4 Grand Prix of the year. And then they came to Barcelona.
Round turn 3 we go, and it's Nico Rosberg and Hamilton's onto the grass, and Hamilton's had a massive crash, and he's crashed into his teammate. The two Mercedes come together as Hamilton tries to pass on the inside, and he can cover his hands over his eyes, and he won't want to see that again.
I was in the lead, closed the door, and he went for the gap anyways. Went to the right, and there was a gap there, but it closed.
Ayrton Senna versus Alain Prost is arguably the most iconic rivalry in Formula One history. The Brazilian joined Prost at McLaren in 1988, when their Honda-powered car was almost untouchable. It was all smiles as the season got underway, but Prost was furious at the Portuguese Grand Prix, accusing Senna of crowding him into the pit wall at top speed as they battled for the lead.
Prost having a look, and Senna's crowding him into the pit wall, and Prost is on, I would think, full boost, and Prost goes through to take the lead.
Senna went on to take the title after a brilliant comeback drive at Suzuka. But 12 months later, animosity between them had grown, and their championship-deciding collision in Japan is the stuff of legend.
Ayrton Senna has to win today, as he had to win last year to win the World Championship.
This is the opportunity that Senna's looking for, and he's going through, out! Oh my goodness, this is fantastic! They meet! This is what we were fearing might happen during the race. And we're about to see Ayrton Senna retake the lead. I think he's got vastly superior power, and through. Now, Nannini smokes up. Ayrton Senna wins in Japan. Is there going to be a stewards' inquiry? Alain Prost will have one if he can.
Senna was later disqualified for using an escape road to rejoin the track, handing Prost the title. The Frenchman quit McLaren anyway, saying he could no longer work with Senna.
To be very honest, I mean, I'm quite happy to leave, because I think it becomes absolutely impossible to work with Ayrton.
But incredibly, there was yet another Japanese title showdown between them the following year. With Prost now driving for Ferrari, the pair qualified first and second, but Senna vowed he wouldn't let Prost get into the first corner ahead of him. And history soon repeated itself.
The grid is clear, the lights go! And Senna sprints away, but Alain Prost takes the lead. It's happened. Alain Prost has taken the advantage. Senna is trying to go through on the inside, and it's happened immediately. This is amazing. Senna goes off at the first corner, but what has happened to Prost? He has gone off too. Well, that is amazing, but I fear absolutely predictable.
Fortunately, it went wrong on the first corner. There was a big risk. I had nothing to lose on the first corner. I want to win, and I went for a gap in inside on the first corner. Alain didn't see it and just closed the door, and we ended up touching. Last year I lost in a similar manner towards the end of the race instead of the beginning, and this year went wrong for him.
So immediate and effective was Lewis Hamilton's impact as a rookie in 2007 that it rattled the reigning two-time world champion. He showed he feared no one when he pulled off a superb overtake on the Spaniard around the outside of Turn 1 at the opening race in Melbourne. And from that moment on, Alonso knew he'd have to bring all his skills to beat his young teammate. There was tension all year long, with Hamilton feeling he was denied a chance of victory in Monaco, and Alonso venting his frustrations in Montreal and Indianapolis. But when the title fight headed to Hungary, the tension boiled over into an all-out war. In qualifying, Hamilton failed to let Alonso through on track as agreed, and the Spaniard retaliated with a calculated strike of his own as he sat in the McLaren pit box just long enough to deny his young rival a final run at taking pole position.
We wait for the countdown in the radio and we go. Sometimes it's 10 seconds, sometimes 45 seconds like the first stop of today, sometimes 10 or 15 like the second, but I think the calculation was wrong because my teammate didn't complete the lap and I crossed the line with 2 or 3 seconds, so it was really, really tight, and these things unfortunately happened today to us.
The stewards later stripped Alonso of pole for his actions, dropping him to P6, while in the end neither McLaren driver took the title, as Ferrari's Kimi Räikkönen surprised them both by snatching it by a single point at the final race. While the 1982 turbo cars were some of the fastest and most brutal in the sport's history, the season itself was marred by controversy, strike action, political infighting, and tragedy. Ferrari's 126 C2 car was a rocket, and both Gilles Villeneuve and Didier Pironi were tipped as title contenders. But the season started poorly for the Scarlet cars, with Pironi's 6th place at Brazil their only points finish in the first 3 races. At Imola, the Ferraris had the chance to get their season up and running when a boycott meant only 14 cars arrived for the Grand Prix. On race day, the fast but unreliable Renaults of Alain Prost and René Arnoux dropped out, leaving Villeneuve and Pironi to fight it out for the lead in front of a delighted partisan crowd. As the laps ticked down, a Ferrari pitboard sent out a simple order to the drivers: slow. Villeneuve believed that meant hold position, but Pironi had other ideas.
Got to come down the inside, he's got it, he's going wide, whoa! Fantastic stuff, they've changed places, done 2 laps running in Pironi now, all he has to do now is keep it pointing the right way.
The last of the late breakers, Pironi has shown himself to be with that masterly manoeuvre on the last lap in this San Marino Grand Prix.
The Canadian's body language on the podium spoke volumes. He was incensed and vowed to never speak to Pironi again. Tragically, he was killed just 2 weeks later during qualifying for the Belgian Grand Prix at Zolder, while later that year, Pironi suffered a career-ending injury at Hockenheim. Carlos Reutemann was already a race winner in F1 with both Brabham and Ferrari, but when he joined Williams in 1980, he did so on the understanding he would move over for team leader Alan Jones if asked. Jones took the title in their first year together in dominant fashion, but at the second race of the 1981 season, the Brazilian Grand Prix, the pair were out in front, with Jones staring at Hoytemann's exhaust for lap after lap, but not mounting any attacks for the lead, fully expecting his teammate to pull aside in the dying moments to fulfill the terms of the agreement. Despite the team hanging out a pit board declaring their expected finishing order, Hoytemann was in no mood to relinquish what he thought was a deserved win and crossed the line in P1. If he didn't like the contract, he shouldn't have signed it, said a livid Jones, who refused to stand on the podium alongside his teammate. Hoytemann admitted he'd gone back on his word, but said he simply couldn't bring himself to give up the victory. Nelson Piquet was already a two-time champion when he joined Williams in 1986, while his new teammate Nigel Mansell had just 2 wins to his name in Formula One. But if the Brazilian didn't expect to be challenged by a man he had written off as an uneducated fool, he was soon put right on that score. And as they arrived at Brands Hatch for the British Grand Prix in July, Mansell had 3 wins to Piquet's 1. Keen to assert his authority in the team, Piquet insisted on having first dibs on the spare car, being set up for his driving style. But after his driveshaft failed on the first start at Brands Hatch, Mansell took Piquet's spare for the restart, necessary after a big lap 1 shunt had stopped the race. Then harried the Brazilian into making a gear shift mistake, which allowed the Briton to take the lead. He then fended off Piquet's attacks to take the win in front of his ecstatic home crowd.
Mansell is the winner! Great stuff! Wonderful drive, a magnificent drive in the spare car. Well done! The crowd is roaring its approval.
There was no post-race handshake between them, as the two men, never friendly to begin with, became ever more suspicious and ever more determined to beat the other. But just like Hamilton and Alonso 2 decades later, the feuding teammates would both miss out on the title, as Alain Prost beat them in what was an undoubtedly slower McLaren. The 1997 Formula One World Championship went down to the wire, with 2 men in contention at the final race in Jerez, Michael Schumacher and Jacques Villeneuve.
Spent all the 2 weeks leading to that last race, reminding people what happened to Damon. Just bring that, and I think that put a little bit of pressure on Michael, to the point where the FIA said if something like this happens, that driver will be disqualified. Nothing nasty has to happen on the track. But we went into that race knowing we would come out of it the winners. There was no other option.
With the German leading by a single point, qualifying for the season-ending European Grand Prix was one of the tightest in the sport's history. Incredibly, 3 drivers posted the exact same fastest time, 1 minute 21.072 seconds, with the Canadian given pole for setting the benchmark first. Schumacher lined up P2 on the grid and got a fantastic start, putting his Ferrari into the lead at the first corner. But Villeneuve, son of legendary Ferrari racer Gilles, wasn't done yet.
Villeneuve is all over him, look, he's going through! Oh yes!
Oh,
I don't think...
Out goes Michael Schumacher!
That didn't work, Michael, you hit the wrong part of him, my friend. I don't think that will cause Villeneuve a problem.
We had discussed this internally with the team, with Jacques, with my friends, and we were 100% sure that if there was the opportunity, then the opportunity would be taken. And that's why when I got next to him and we hadn't banged wheels yet, I was surprised. And it just came a little bit later.
And if Villeneuve can just keep going in the points, he's won the World Championship of 1997.
Villeneuve managed to nurse his stricken Williams home in 3rd, losing 2 places on the final lap, winning the World Championship by 3 points, while Schumacher was later disqualified from that year's championship for his actions. And it would be 3 more years before he tasted title success with Ferrari.